We are moving along in our Introduction to Pagan Path series. Today we are talking about Celtic paganism, and while I am very eclectic, this is one of my favorites, and I work with several Celtic deities. We have an interesting twist with the Celtic religion: no written language. Our prior paths, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman, had a written language, and quite honestly, I see where we are overly dependent upon it. For the Celts, we are relying on archaeology and stories handed down through the ages. We have some accounts that were written by Romans, notably Julius Caesar himself, and by early Christians, most of which, as you can imagine, are notoriously bad. So in 400 BC, before the Roman Empire, the Celts lived throughout much of Europe. Historians and archaeologists, who notoriously like to argue, generally agree that the Celtic culture thrived in Europe from around 600 BCE to 49 CE, which roughly corresponds with the historical Iron Age period. Timelines vary greatly with region. For modern Celtic pagans, we don't see these lines as definitive. In fact, many pagans look back to the Neolithic and Bronze Ages to view the beginnings of religious experiences and deities. Hi, I'm Amy, founder of Celebrate Pagan Holidays, Eclectic Pagan in Greenwich. You can check out my website store for some PDF books on sale as well as free downloads. So, thinking back on the map, we just saw the Celtic kingdom covered a lot of territory. Today, we often think of the Celts as belonging to Great Britain, Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. In some places, the language has survived, and the countries have preserved many historical and religious sites. The Celtic pagan religion has many deities, over 200. People who study pagan theology divide Celtic polytheism into several broad categories. We are not going to get into all of that. Just know that it is complex and deities may vary a good bit across different Celtic cultures and regions. I have two suggestions. One, explore deities from a certain location, possibly one where you have ancestors or make a connection. And two, meditate and be open to what gods speak to you. We have a rich history of heroes in Ireland, possibly stories of the gods rewritten by Christians who obviously feared pagan worship. Many myths remain about the Tua de Danann, which means the folk of the goddess Danu. This race of supernatural people lived in the other world, but interacted with humans. However, it can be unclear which characters are folk heroes and which represent a god, as their stories were written down by Irish monks. The priest class is the Druids, and they were made up of both men and women. They were also political leaders. We have some historical remnants of their worship places in Europe. Roman writers mention Druid schools where young boys went to learn how to be priests. There may have been schools for young girls, but the patriarchal Romans would not have considered that worthwhile information. Druids practiced in sacred groves of trees, especially where there was running water. Nature is sacred, especially oak trees, as they are connected to the other world. Mistletoe was also a very important plant and was used in rituals as per Roman and Christian writers. Creeks and rivers were often named for deities. Water is a life force and is associated with wisdom, stamina, and endurance. We know that the ancient Celts gave offerings to the creeks and rivers, as many archaeological finds come from them. Coins and jewelry are popular, but also cauldrons, presumably holding food, and weapons have been found. As I mentioned, the Celtic people had many gods. Cernunnos, the horned god, is one of the earliest known deities. This picture is from a silver cauldron dating between 200 and 1 BCE. We don't have a lot of surviving information to tell us how he was worshipped, but it is assumed he was a patron deity, god of fertility, animals, and prosperity. Wicca, a more modern pagan path, has drawn heavily on the Celtic deities. The horned god is sometimes seen as a combination of Cernunnos and the Roman god Pan. He is associated with nature, sexuality, and life cycles. He is also represented as a consort with the triple goddess or the moon goddess. In the Roman pagan path video, we talked about Epona, the Celtic goddess of horses, and one of the goddesses I work with. She originally was from a small region, but her popularity among the Roman cavalry spread the worship of her throughout the Roman Empire. Artio is the Celtic goddess near and dear to my heart, as she is the goddess over wildlife and can shapeshift into a bear. I often say she is an environmental educator's dream goddess. Since Artio was popular in artwork, we can glean some information from her. Artio is connected with astrology and astronomy. She is connected to the heavens through the constellations of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, which contain the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. I love this welcoming poem by W. Walker. Praise Artio for your love of the beasts, such compassion and peace. Humbled am I by your selfless love. Guide me as I open my eyes, spirit, and mind to the life of our sisters and brothers of the land. You can check out my video on the goddess Danu. She is the mother figure and the goddess of fertility, creation, water, and the land. The Danube River in Eastern Europe is named for her. The goddess Brigid is connected with wells, so another water connection. She is the goddess of healing, poetry, and blacksmithing. Her popularity led her to be synchronized as the Christian Saint Brigid. Stonehenge and many other monuments were built in the Proto-Celtic period, so before what we refer to as Celtic religion. However, they are an important aspect of the Celtic religion and offer a shared history. The alignment of the stones with the solstices tell us that our ancestors were not only intimately in touch with the natural world, they were looking for powerful ways to bury their dead that gave them honor. We also have areas of historic Druid temples where stones are gathered and placed in a circle. This one is located in Scotland. Like many pagans, the Celts were animists and saw the spirituality in nature. Rocks, trees, the water, waterways all have a soul or spirit. One way for us to connect with the Celtic deities is to get out and enjoy nature. The ancient Celts would place votive offerings in the water. Since this isn't an option for us, we don't want to harm wildlife or create pollution. A picnic honoring the gods is a good option. Offerings can be very simple: salt, sugar, beer. Animal sacrifices were done by the ancients. Our lives are very different in the modern world, so ritual animal deaths are far less common. Also, for me personally, I'm a wildlife rehabilitator and I've spent my life trying to save animals. I typically try to give an offering that I know the god or goddess will appreciate. Find a place with oak trees and meditate among them. You don't have to get out in the wilderness. A city park will do just fine. We do know that the Celts used magic and spells. The Romans wrote about these. They were fearful that the Druid priests would place harmful spells on them. Modern Wicca uses the wheel of the year, the calendar, to mark celebrations. These revolve around the solstices and the agricultural calendar. Several of these religious holidays began with the Celtic people. Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, and Lunace were believed to be the main ceremonial, quote unquote, holidays to the ancient Celts. So we talked about the solstices having religious significance. This is the Newgrange Monument, which is located in Ireland. It was built in the Neolithic period over 5,000 years ago. It is aligned so that the rising sun on the winter solstice shines through a hole in the roof and lights up the inner chamber. Votive offerings and evidence of rituals have been found here. Beltane and Samhain both have very deep roots and date back to a pastoral society when the people herded livestock. They mark the beginning and the end of the time when livestock were left out in the hills to graze. Both are also very rooted in fire, as it symbolizes light, and also for its significance in healing and protection of the cattle and sheep. Druids would have overseen rituals performed during these holidays. Just a personal FYI, I spent most of the 1970s in speech class in my elementary school. After over 20 years in education, I think it's more processing than speech. Regardless, my speech and pronunciation are often poor. I've been working on it my entire life, but I understand from comments and emails that I get that bothers some people. That said, if you like the content, please give me a thumbs up as it'll help the channel grow. I appreciate your comments and I learn a lot from different perspectives. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and in the meantime, have a very witchy day.